So my neighbor is getting married today, and I'm walking through the forest to get to his house. I have a viola, and so I'm playing in the garden for his wedding, and I could not bring my 400-year-old viola. So I've got this beautiful viola instead, which the maker has assured me is a lot more stable, so I don't need to worry about playing it in this beautiful 60-degree weather. What a lovely way to get to a wedding. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Masumi.
It's great to be here at your shop, and I really want to start by saying thank you so much for saving my life, or my viola's life, the other day. So a friend asked me to play for their wedding, and I realized it was outside, and it would not be a great idea to take my 400-plus-year-old viola to play in an outdoor wedding, because I realized, and I'm going to put this out there right from the get-go, that I am just a blip in the life and journey of my viola, which is over 400 years old, and so I am just a caretaker along its
along its history.
Yeah, along its history. Yeah. So I texted you frantically, saying, like a couple days before the wedding, saying, I'm looking at the weather, and what do you think? Is this a good idea? And you said, no.
Yeah.
And you graciously lent me this beautiful viola, which you recently crafted. And I actually saw it in the white when you were making it. So can you tell me first about the thinking about playing outside and why this would be better than my instrument?
It's not always about the age of the instrument. I think there are a lot of benefits to something that's had some age and has had some time to acclimate and dry. And this isn't a brand new instrument. It had been played for a couple of years since you saw it, and the person who had it needed to scale down because of a shoulder injury. So they need something even smaller.
We like big violas, but sometimes they hurt.
Love a big viola, yeah. But your viola has had a lot of interventions over the years, so it has a lot of different layers of wood.
Yeah.
And so different pieces of wood will expand and contract at different rates. And so when you take them into a different environment, then they start fighting against each other.
Right.
And
it's all the movement.
Yeah.
Right?
If your viola was 400 years old and in perfect condition, which doesn't exist.
Yeah,
there is no such thing. But it would actually be quite stable.
Right.
But it's because these things live lives, and that they've had interventions over the years, and different pieces of wood added and removed, and that they become complicated.
Yeah.
And exposing them to these extremes in humidity and temperature.
So does the wood itself actually change over the course of these centuries? The composition of it, or like the way it works?
Yeah, it does. And there's kind of a sweet spot in a lot of ways where when something gets to be 20 years old, it's pretty well dry. And that's why we oftentimes use very old wood. Like this wood is from the 70s, so it's already very well dried.
It's from the 70s, and you built it in which year?
Finished in 2021.
21, right?
Yeah, and it's already very stable. And so it has a lot of things going for it for playing in a lot of different environments. But as wood ages, generally speaking, it gets almost powdery. Because it oxidizes.
Yeah.
And so, like if you cut into it, it almost crumbles, it turns to dust.
Interesting.
And its cohesion is kind of unstable. Yeah.
Unstable. It's interesting. Somebody once told me that when you're cutting along newer wood, the blade will get sort of moved along in different.
It follows
like
the hard and the soft grains in the spruce in particular.
But then older wood,
it's very cohesive, very consistent. And actually, there are certain makers who treated their wood in different ways, and so actually it behaves quite differently. The Strad's instruments are particular in this vein, like if you cut into it, it's almost waxy. It has really great cohesion. Still,
how many Strads have you cut into?
just 3. Yeah. And for very minor alterations.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's,
did you feel like any shakes? Did you get nervous?
No. You get pretty calm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I do. At least. Yeah.
It's almost like focused.
It's very
calm.
focused. Yeah. And it's it's
in the zone.
very. I think it's more like tunnel vision than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was waxy?
I think it's been treated with a variety of resins, basically.
Is that different than other instruments?
Yeah.
Huh.
And there are a lot of modern treatments which sort of replicate that, and that actually helps things be more stable. Like wood that's been treated in what we suspect is a very similar fashion, and it actually adds a lot of like sealing to the inside, so it doesn't take on moisture in the same way, so it's not as irritable.
So this chemist I think in Texas, Nagavari.
Oh, yeah,
is there any
sure.
truth to that? His idea that Strad's wood was actually because it's treated sounds superior.
I think it's a very small portion of it. Yeah, I don't think that's the reason why they sound superior.
Right.
I think that's why a Strad that's in good condition, they're very reliable. Mm-hmm. They really sound pretty consistent. They need very little adjustment. I know people who have had their Strad for 30 years and gotten it adjusted 2 or 3 times in that time frame. And that's remarkable.
That's very remarkable.
And that's
like a normal time frame would be what for like on average like
twice a year.
Twice a year, yeah,
at least.
Yeah,
if not 4. And usually, the more interventions there are, the more you need. And there's also a big difference between a violin and a viola, and then a cello, as to how much movement there's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's, violinists kind of have it lucky in a lot of ways, because they're more or less like, if it's a healthy instrument, it's going to be pretty predictable.
Right.
And violas, when you get that big arch and that big air volume, there can be a lot of movement.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in here.
A lot of air to move.
Yeah.
And that's what gives you a C string.
Yeah.
If you don't have that air volume, then you don't have that fundamental pitch.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of considerations. Yeah.
Huh. So can you tell me a little bit about this viola?
Oh, sure. So this is a copy of an Andrea Guarneri. This is one that was sold in 2018.
Kind of similar to like what Primrose was playing.
Very similar model. It has, the major difference is that the edge on this one was a little more turned. It had a crisper edge, whereas Primrose really was pretty flat.
Was his cut down?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, very, very healthy. Great example.
So was Andrea Guarneri experimenting with?
I think he just had a little bit of flair when he was making this one.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was in very, very good preservation.
Yeah.
It hadn't been played as much as Primrose's, so the edge hadn't been worn as much.
Oh, I see. So you could.
So I think it's a combination of 2 things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it has that really exaggerated flare on the edge, which really caught my eye.
Yeah.
And this deviates from it, in that it has pretty widely flamed back as opposed to the very tight, narrow flame.
Is this maple?
This is not maple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poplar?
No.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. You're not going to get there.
Willow.
No, it's European birch.
European birch.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are the properties of birch?
It's very similar to maple.
Okay.
I mean,
rock hard and
rock hard, very predictable. It has a lower expansion coefficient, so it's a little more stable. Okay. And then beyond that, the sound velocity is almost exactly the same, I think, and the density is very, very close. So there's.
Why did you experiment with birch?
So I have a good friend and wood dealer in Germany who.
A wood dealer.
Yeah.
Love
and
it. That's like you're in a whole other world.
Well, yeah. Well, so he knows I'm a sucker.
Okay.
And so he's always sending me pictures of stuff that he thinks I'll like.
Uh-huh.
And he had sent me pictures of this, and he had enough for a viola and a cello. And I kind of couldn't resist it, so I made a cello and a viola from it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
When the wood was cut in the 70s,
yeah.
It was quarter-sawn maple, quarter-sawn birch.
Yeah.
So because it was quarter-sawn, were they thinking already at that time, this is for instruments?
No, this he found, and these two pieces here, I was able to get from the edges of the log, and I was able to get a one-piece cello back, and then the two pieces for a viola from it.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's not quarter sawn.
Well, it is. Yeah.
It's quarter.
It's on the edge of the tree. Yeah.
Okay.
So like.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You have the big tree, and this was actually like a center cut. So like in the middle of the tree, it'll be slab sawn, but on the edges the grain lines all line up, so it is actually quarter sawn on the edges.
Right.
Yeah.
So many different ways to slice a tree.
That's right. Yeah.
Beautiful. And can you tell me a little bit about which I really appreciate, in a way, the sort of lack of antiquing? I mean, there's character.
Yeah, there's
but there's
character.
not like, it's not like you gouge it up.
And that's, I do like, taking particular instruments as a point of inspiration. And the nice thing about copying, particular antique violas, sometimes they're in incredibly good condition. And the instrument I was copying was in exceptionally good condition.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, why would I go start hitting this with chains and rocks and things like this that other people do? It's like, when it was like...
Chains and rocks, like, so you make an instrument and you start like beating it up. You're right.
I don't, but that's something that people do. And it's, I love finding the really pristine examples. And like, okay, like that's what you want to copy.
Yeah.
Like not the one that's been thrown around in a carriage for 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was personally struck seeing the Medici Strad in Florence, the viola.
Yeah.
It looks like a
incredible.
modern instrument. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a real eye opener.
That's a great example because it's almost like a cut gem. In its precision and its beauty.
Yeah.
It's like there's something so harmonious about how everything is laid out and defined, and without the edges being really worn and all this damage.
And so much varnish.
So much varnish, and it's like it's kind of breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's a really outstanding instrument,
Yeah.
and you can imagine like what it was when it was off of his bench, and what it'd be. Like you'd be like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And with no antiquing, no exaggerations, no mimicry. Yeah.
Some pretty special clients there.
That's right.
You got to have some.
Yeah.
Something
you got to deliver the goods.
Yeah, that's right. Any additional pointers for anybody out there for playing outside?
Or playing outside, it's.
Besides going carbon fiber, which I was like, do you have a carbon fiber or something along those lines?
Carbon fiber, I think they're tough. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a tough road to go.
Yeah.
It's nice that they're so predictable. But I think you do lose some character.
Right.
So, that's, when you're dealing with, we're always making music that's been played for centuries, or things that will be played for centuries, and it's like, your way to make it your own is so much in the sound that you produce.
Right.
So it's hard to let that go.
Yeah.
And just be like, oh.
I do every once in a while fantasize about having an instrument that I could just leave in the trunk of my car in the winter and just lock up and not worry about. But you know, but I appreciate also, you know, the burden of my
and you know, I think from a standpoint of, you know, if you're going to be, you know, playing outside and doing all these things, it's like, you know, while you don't leave it in the car, obviously, you know, if you can just give the instrument time to get used to the environment, it'll be okay. You know, if it's a reasonably healthy instrument, you know, these things are pretty durable.
Just don't shock it.
Just don't shock it. Yeah. Don't go from, you know, 65 degrees air conditioned to 90 degrees in a swamp.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be happy about that.
I'm headed down to Charleston, South Carolina on Saturdays. So
and you know, it's, you know, but you can give it time to adjust.
Yeah.
You know, when you get there, you leave it in the case the first day, you get a break from practice. You know?
Right.
So and the cases can do a lot to help ease an instrument into a new environment. You know, because they're not, you know, even a gasketed case isn't airtight.
Right.
You know, it's still going to permeate through. It's still going to get the warmth. It's still going to get the humidity.
Yeah.
So just leaving it in the case for a day can do a lot to moderate it.
Okay.
Give it a chance.
Yeah. Sometimes I open the case.
Yeah.
And leave it under the blanket.
Yeah.
And in the bag. Just,
you know, the silk bags are pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
You know, kind of just leaving it in the silk bag does a lot. Yeah.
Get a silk bag.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're pretty.
Yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah. Who doesn't like pretty things? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really
of course.
appreciate your help and all of your advice and for being here for all of us.
Yeah. My pleasure.